Hi, my name is Keith Gelhorn. I own ADDvocacy. And what we do is we coach neurodivergent youth and adults who live with ADHD, learning disabilities, autism, anxiety, and any co-occurring mental health challenge that impacts executive functioning. Our clients are students, kind of grade 12 and up. We have a post-secondary transition program. We coach post-secondary students, which as of this year in Nova Scotia is 100% funded through the province, through if you're a student with a permanent disability, and also across Canada to varying levels between 50 to 100%. Then we also coach adults who are in career transition, parents, and entrepreneurs. Today with us, we have Nicole Osmond, who is, I don't even remember where we met, but we've known each other for a long time, maybe through Futurepreneur. But we've been running in the same circles and networking for years and years, and decided to bring her on partly to talk about one of the projects she's involved with called Rise Loans, but also listen to her story about her story getting into business and entrepreneurship and how she supports people at this time. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Nicole, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. Thanks, Keith. Thanks for the invite and having me. I always enjoy any time I get to spend with you, and we get to talk about entrepreneurship and business and all that exciting stuff. So a little bit about me, I guess. My entire career has been entrepreneurship. I started in Newfoundland once I finished university, and it was funny because you had mentioned just before we started that one of my early careers or early jobs was as a career development officer. And as I'm thinking back to that, I realized then that even at that point, like I was working with people, coaching them on, interviews and resume building and trying to find that right job and everything else. And we had a career handbook. And when I went through that career handbook, I noticed there wasn't one mention in it about entrepreneurship, about starting your own business, being your own boss. And I remember going to my manager at the time and asked if I could insert some information about entrepreneurship. And she agreed. And then we actually did a rewrite of it with entrepreneurship included as a career option. So I think that's pretty cool. And I didn't even remember that until we were just chatting about it. So entrepreneurship for me has been really my whole career. I've worked with different organizations, the CBDC, Seed, Futurepreneur, and most recently now with Rise, which is a really wonderful organization. We work at the intersection of mental health and entrepreneurship. So anyone who self-identifies as having a mental health challenge or an addictions challenge and they're pursuing entrepreneurship, they've got an idea and they want to develop it, or they have a business now and they want to grow it, then they can connect with Rise, and either through different training programs that we have, or specifically with me as a business advisor and my counterparts across the country, we would work closely with an applicant if they're looking to pursue our lending program. So we have a loan of up to 10,000, and we match all of our applicants with the volunteer business mentor for the first year. So I would work really closely with entrepreneurs, developing their idea, business plan, and then get it to the point where they're confident they have something and they want to move forward with it. So I have my own businesses. I've started 3, currently still run 2. I absolutely love it. It gets to tap into all the different creative kind of sides of me, and I'm a risk averse person by nature, but I know how to manage that risk and stay in the somewhat of a comfort zone when I'm as I'm pursuing entrepreneurship and the passions that I love and stuff like that. It's I'm solopreneur, so I work with cool people like yourself and all that, but really I'm my own business, my own boss, and I get to design every day how that looks. So it's pretty fun.
So how early did you know? I know you mentioned when you came out of university and you're working at YMCA that you noticed there was a gap missing, but how early can you think back to the earliest time in, I guess, childhood or wherever where you felt that entrepreneurial drive and what that looked like as it formed into your career?
Well, I never grew up thinking I'd be an entrepreneur, honestly. Like I didn't, my family comes from nurses and teachers, and and public servants and stuff like that, right? So there's some aspects of entrepreneurship throughout my family. My grandfather had 3 businesses at one point, and all that. So I learned a lot of that history from my dad and my family. But for me, when I went to university, the goal was to become a chartered accountant, which when I
Okay.
think back now, I can't even imagine. Like it's uh yeah, it's hard to even but that was kind of positioned to us, from out of high school. Like, what are you going to do? You go to university, you
Yep.
go and you look at the professions, you look at all that. So it wasn't even really a big thing. That was There was no entrepreneurship 12. There was none of that when I went
Mhm.
to high school, right? And but it was through different career experiences that there was elements of the entrepreneurial stuff that really kind of it caught my attention. It excited me. I love those aspects of things, like connecting with people, trying to research and figure things out, be a solution finder, like all those, like, I guess, transferable skills that were really part of the career, but also aspects of entrepreneurship that I really loved. I remember specifically being in a course once for a Youth Service Canada position that I was doing. It was all of us across Newfoundland. And we were asked the question, like, what's the most important element of a job for you? And I remember saying autonomy. And I
Okay.
was the only one in the whole thing that said autonomy.
Yeah.
And every like a lot of my counterparts or colleagues were job security and income, and it was
Hmm.
benefits and stuff like that, but autonomy was one. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I got to dig into this more. It's like, why is that so important to me? That's my number one. So it's no surprise to me that my career kind of shaped the way it did. And
So
but go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna interrupt, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
It'll happen once or twice during this episode, I'm sure. But can you dig back and figure out where that need for autonomy came from? Like, if you thought back, like, where did it come from, do you think?
uh That's a good question, Keith. Honestly, I don't know. It was just one of those things that it mattered to me. And I don't know exactly why, but I just know it was a core value for me. I
Okay.
needed to be able to I'm a person that you tell me what needs to be done and I'll go and do it. Like
Mhm.
I don't want to be micromanaged. I don't want to be,
Yeah.
I want to be empowered to make decisions and but also I guess understand that even if I make the wrong decision, that somebody would have my back on that because they would have trusted the process that I went through to get there. Yeah, so it's been important to me,
Okay.
and I think the roles I've had, the types of businesses I've done, like that's always been a big part of it for
So
sure.
can you walk us through a bit about your career? I love this. One of my most favorite part about my job is hearing stories, and just in general, I could talk all day and I could listen to stories all day. So now I want to hear your story. You talked about coming through university, landing in YMCA. Where did you go from there? And yeah, tell us about your experiences.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting. Like when I finished university, my first job was with the CBDC, and that was
Mhm.
my first exposure to entrepreneurship. From there, I was went with the YMCA, and in the YMCA, I ran one of the Youth Service Canada programs,
Okay.
and I had 15 youth, and then we looked at all kinds of different things, career and entrepreneurship. And then from there, I moved into still with the Y, but it was in partnership with Service Canada, and it was in the Career Development Center. So, working with people and just in building their careers, right?
Mhm.
And finding the thing that really excites them and they're passionate about. And then entrepreneurship, I found that there was a gap that it wasn't being introduced there. So I brought that lens to it. And then I think in doing that, there was an opportunity at the time with the Y, which I was working with. They were looking to bring the concept of open for business, which was being run out of Seed in Halifax.
Okay.
They were looking to bring that to Newfoundland, and specifically to Corner Brook. And at the time, our CEO sent me over like on a kind of a fact-finding mission, right? To connect with the local open for business centers that were in Cape Breton at the time. There was three: Sydney, North Sydney, and Glace Bay. Anyway, I came over from Corner Brook to really explore that option, with the idea that perhaps we bring that back to Corner Brook, and then I run an open for business in Corner Brook. So
Okay.
anyway, there was a feasibility study done and all kinds of stuff, and there was a long timeline for it. But lo and behold, during that time, I started looking at, okay, what's out there for me? And I was looking specifically at Halifax and Ottawa as potential places for me to relocate, just kind of wanting a new change and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And there was an option in Halifax for a manager of open for business. So the
Okay.
same center that they were looking to bring to Newfoundland, there was now an opening in Halifax. So I applied for it, did a phone interview, and they hired me over the phone.
Amazing.
And I left my uh, Newfoundland, and said,
Hmm.
got on the Newfie cruise ship, and
Yeah.
headed over to Halifax, and then that started my career at Seed. Was running the Open for Business Center.
Okay.
And then from there it went into lending, was different roles within Seed, and then eventually left Seed after, I think it was 9 years, and went with Futurepreneur and led the Atlantic region for Futurepreneur for 8 years,
Hmm.
and then took the leap out on my own 4 years ago, and pursued entrepreneurship full time.
Okay.
So for me, it was like I was surrounded by
That's the
entrepreneurs,
thing.
right? Like the Keiths of the world.
Hmm.
And you get really kind of charged up and excited about that. And then eventually he's like, okay, I need to kind of really live that autonomy, like that thing that really mattered to me. It always mattered to me. So,
Hmm.
and then entrepreneurship was the way that I could do that.
Yeah, I was always been curious about people who work like it, like some of the case managers at Seed or Futurepreneur. Like how could you not do that job without running your own business? Just
Yeah.
because it is such a hype. That's what I love doing. Like going back in, like you had me come in at NSCC there a couple weeks ago. That I love doing that stuff and talking to new
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. It's just such a buzz. Fills your cup, right? So it's
It
pretty neat.
does. Yeah.
So when you did go
Yeah.
off on your own, because I know some of the businesses you ran. So can you tell us about how you did make that leap and what prompted you to get into your first business?
Yeah. So I think, well, I was always, thinking about what idea can I pursue? And I would come home like almost every week, and I'd say to my husband, like, oh, what about this idea? And then I'd kind of sit on it for a bit. And then I realized the idea just faded, after a week. I lost that excitement towards it.
Mhm.
So I think what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs is, like, you want to pursue entrepreneurship. There's an itch that you got to scratch somehow, and
Mhm.
you just got to do that. But then you're searching for the idea. So I went through that, probably about 2 years of going through that
Okay.
and not sure, okay, what's the right idea. And then through my own personal experience and connection to the problem, which is something that was rather simple. It was my sister has a spinal injury. She'd come to visit me from Ontario. She'd want to rent a mobility scooter while she was here in Halifax. Well, she did that twice while she was here. There was one company that offered that service in all of Halifax. Very limited options, high price tag on it, um, and could really make some adjustments to customer service. Like, it was like
Mhm.
that. There was a gap, for sure. There was a gap. So when I realized her experience going through that, and then ultimately my experience as her sister, watching kind of navigate that whole process, I realized there's a gap here. There's a need for this, and like we could be better as a city. Like we
Mhm.
could be better than just one company doing this. And so I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to just get some. I can buy some scooters, and I can start renting, and I can just dive into it.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. And then I remember distinctly, uh, one night after I had done that, and I was like, okay, got the name, got all this and everything else. And then all of a sudden, the idea that insurance, I don't have insurance yet. I had to go
Yep.
and figure out the insurance piece. And that became probably one of the biggest challenges for me at the time, was just navigating that, and the liability aspect of it and everything else. But I think for me, it was I had wanted to pursue entrepreneurship. I struggled in trying to find the right idea. A lot of ideas kind of excited me, then just faded because they
Yeah.
weren't the right idea for me. They were right idea for somebody else, And I would hope that, some of those ideas take shape and come to life. Somebody else does them, right?
Hmm.
But they weren't for me. And it wasn't until that I felt the pain and understood the solution that really was the thing that motivated me and drove me to take action. And that became the business. And I ran that business for 6 years, and then I,
Hmm.
I closed it down about just over a year ago.
Okay.
And
Did
it
you
had
sell
it
it
had
or
what
close
was
it?
that?
Did you sell it? Like what got to the point of getting out of it?
Yeah,
Seriously.
I got out of it all good reasons. The
Mhm.
pandemic happened, so that made
Right.
a shift in everything. But at the time, there were other companies now that were starting to introduce this service to their offering.
Okay.
So I had customers had other options, which
Hmm.
was really mission accomplished. That's
Yep.
what I wanted
Yep.
to do, right? It doesn't have to be me doing it. I just wanted the service there. And now
Hmm.
it is there. And multiple companies do it.
Okay.
And yeah, so that I sold my assets, all the inventory I had, I sold it to customers. I
Oh,
gave
no
them
way.
first dibs for it. And yeah, so they all the assets are have been sold. and
Hmm.
and um and I've shared different, like, the stuff I've developed through that business. I've shared it with other companies that could use, what I've created in waivers and liability agreements and rental agreements and
Yeah,
payment process and all that kind of stuff. I've shared that with others. So
that's amazing.
yeah,
The
yeah. I think there's a
gift you
time
have
and
to give.
place, and there's
Yeah.
a season, and all that stuff. And it was the right time. It was I had other interest. I don't think
Yeah.
I can't do one thing for the rest of my life. Like there's a
What?
whole bunch of things I want
I
to
get
do,
to
right?
say.
And yeah, and I get to do them. So
So can you tell me so the pandemic hit and what was next on your plate?
um, next on my plate, well, my sister and I had also started a business together called Piece by Piece Puzzles, and we
Hmm.
still run that business. It's a jigsaw puzzle business, so very different than the renting mobility equipment. But that business, it's a beautiful concept, simple concept behind it, where we take my sister's poetry and messages of love and encouragement and hope and all that friendship, and we layer her message on an image that connects with the message, and then we converted it to 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. So
Yeah.
you get that therapeutic experience of a jigsaw puzzle, because a lot of benefits for doing a
Hmm.
simple jigsaw puzzle. We know that. And then also that added layer of a message of hope and encouragement, and specifically when we did that was around people struggling with mental health. So somebody dealing with PTSD, right? We had our first puzzle was called Into the Light, and it was a message of hope and like getting to that first light in the morning, like getting to that place where there's comfort and there's hopefulness there. So yeah, we did that together and blended our skills. She's the creative, the artist, the poet,
Hmm.
and then my business skills. And we did that together, and we still run that. We sell product online, mainly online, and have had a lot of fun with that. Learn a ton.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think all of my career, my paid jobs plus my entrepreneurial career, uh, really led me to the work that I do with new entrepreneurs starting out with businesses, with teams, trying to develop and really honor this a customer committed culture, like within the organizations, because businesses have to get that customer experience right. They want to compete on a level and grow their business. They have to get that right. And there's a lot of different um, challenges and things that people need to focus on in their business. And I think one of the reasons why many entrepreneurs take an idea and kind of pursue it and develop it is because they realize there was an opportunity to get the customer experience right around the same, could be product, service, whatever it is. And so I do coaching work and facilitation work around that, and I absolutely love it. I get to connect with entrepreneurs in early stages or businesses that really invest in their team and
Right.
empower their team, to do good work and make good decisions that are all customer focused. Because at the end of the day, if they don't get they don't get that right, they're going to really struggle.
Yeah,
They're going to struggle.
it's funny. I have this mechanic that's local, and
Yeah.
they ended up moving. The existing business said they needed the space, so they kicked my old mechanics out. In the
Oh.
meantime, while they were looking for space, I had to go to that mechanic, right? And the ones that I use, I'm going to put a plug in, is a local business called Norse Auto down in Hatchet Lake. Amazing customer service, to the point
Mm.
where one time when I was getting my car inspected, they called me and said it because my air conditioner stopped working. And I was really worried because I knew it was going to probably be $1,000. Anybody else would have charged me 1,000. So they called me back and they said, good news and bad news. Good news, or bad news, air conditioner's not working. Good news, it's a 40-cent part. And like, that's amazing customer
That's
service. And that was
amazing.
instantaneous. You got me. Flip
Yep.
side of that, I went to their competitors who have now kicked them out. I'm not going to mention the business because I don't believe in trashing
Mm.
people. However, dropped my car off like 3 weeks ago. They said they were going to get it in and fix it on a Thursday. A week goes by, no word, no nothing. So I called them up and said, oh, we can't. They said, oh, the parts, they don't have the parts. That was their excuse. So I called the dealership myself and said, oh, yeah,
Mm.
we got parts. And I said, have you had parts before? Yeah, no problem. Right. And
Oh,
phoned them back and they said, okay, well, they said, oh, yeah, no, the dealership has it. I know that. I just called them myself. And so then I waited another week and another week. So
oh
anyways,
my
it ended up
gosh.
being 3 weeks. And finally they said, this was just last Monday. They said, okay, it's going to be ready on Monday. No phone call. So I have to phone them on the Tuesday. And
Hmm.
by the time I phoned them, I was chipped. Right. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they, when I got in there, they all ganged up on me. And I said, you know what? I run a business locally too. The people you just kicked out, you made a big mistake because they're going to drive in business to you all day long. Uh Whatever. And they're like, but we're busy and we're doing this and we're doing that. And I said, all you need to do is phone and let your customer know what's going on. That's all it would take.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no
Yeah.
excuse and there's nothing you can say now, other than they wanted me to apologize. So that I'm not apologizing. I'm going to give you a tip. And what I should have done instead of give them a tip to call you, right? Maybe I should do that afterwards.
Yeah.
But
But those who know,
it's
those who get
crucial.
it, they get it. Right.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a crucial thing. I said, if, like, I'm running into a problem right now, as I mentioned before we got on this call, it's not a problem, it's a great problem to have.
Hmm.
I'm having my biggest networking thingy moment of my life where I'm working with two doctors, which I'll plug. One is Dr. Gurdeep Pahar, who owns the Adult ADHD Center, which is based out of Vancouver. And they've got nurse practitioners stationed right across Canada to be able to do adult ADHD diagnosis for $300 in 4 to 6 weeks instead of spending 2,500 to 3,500, which is
Hmm.
completely unnecessary for this. So I did a little handshake deal, just pop up. I was like, hey, you want to be at a conference with me in Whistler? And there was no conference in Whistler or or anything of that. I just literally phoned a friend that I knew that lived there. She arranged some space at the high school. We went and did a little mini night conference for 50 people. And and then I said, no, it'd be really nice to meet up with him again. Hopefully at some point. He's like, what about Friday? And so I literally had to go home, write up this massive proposal that was just off the cuff. None of it made any sense. I still don't even know what even's on it, right? But it was enough that myself and my other coach, Kendra, did. And we pitched it to him, and he's like, awesome. So basically, what it was is like, instead of spending 2,500 to 3,500 on a psych ed assessment, you could come to us for $3,000. You get ADHD assessment, medication, a 10-week course on real information, research-backed information, which Kendra all wrote. She's an amazing researcher that works for me, on how to, like, what is ADHD? How do you deal with it? And then from that, go into like a group coaching program that you get to stay in with all of this for like a year, from the minute you start to the end, right? For $3,000,
Wow.
right in the
Wrap
middle,
around.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, that's
Mhm.
amazing. And off we went. And then I came home and I got COVID while I was out there. And I came home and I hit that COVID fog where I left the building for 3 months. And I also once it's settled in, my impulse, because this is what a lot of us entrepreneurs do, settled in, I was like, holy crap, what have I just done? Because at that point, it was just Alana and I was doing the coaching. I was working in the business and on the business, which a lot of us entrepreneurs have. And I just said, I can never phone that guy back. And I just had this like, I just freaked out until Kendra told me, she's like, Dr. Parr is a really nice guy. I'm sure if you phoned him up, things would be better. And so I phoned him up and he's like, okay, no problem. I mean, that's what people with ADHD do, right? We freak out. And then I came to my senses and he's like, so where are we going from here? And I said, well, I want to keep pursuing this. And so all of a sudden, all these referrals start shooting in. And then like a month ago, I heard about this other company called beyondadhd.ca. So it's another entrepreneur who's based out of New Brunswick. Same idea, relatively the same price, but he also told me that he doesn't just diagnose adult ADHD, he does kids too. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, what age? Right? And he said 6 to 17 post-secondary students and up. And I was like, and that's a demographic that is severely underserved, and adults for that matter, in Nova Scotia. And I was like, man, if you and my head just started ticking, which is something that a lot of us will do. Connecting is my favorite thing, is networking. So I said, man, Dr. Parhire already has the network of nurse practitioners set up all over Canada. You just started, but you do the kids. So if you do the kids and he did the adults, and you swap the nurse practitioners and keep them all going, the Nova Scotia guy can, and like Beyond ADHD, that'll rocket across Canada one way, and the other guy will be able to get out of BC because he's more of he definitely has like a philanthropist point of view, whereas the guy here is the entrepreneurial. But if you mesh the two of you, let's see what happens. So on Thursday, leading up to it, there's a lot of anxiety, right? Especially from Parhar, thinking that Beyond ADHD is going to overtake it or whatever. And I said, don't worry. I said, I'm not ditching you, and I'm not ditching him. We can all work together.
Yeah.
My theory, or not theory, my mode of thinking is ELE, which is from a really bad movie called what was it called? Semi-Pro with what's that guy's name in it? I can't remember. Anyways.
Yeah. Will Ferrell? No.
Will Ferrell. Yeah, it was a horrible movie, but he had this thing in it called ELE, which is everybody love everybody, right? Which is the way I operate. And so I'm like, let's ELE this thing and see what happens. So it started off really nerve-wracked, the initial meeting, because I talk like a million miles a minute, as you can hear, but so does Dr. Chatur. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I think this thing all went to pot. I might, like, in my head, I was like, I just ruined it all. But best thing has been happening all weekend. Emails are going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And they're talking about like, how can we, like the guy here was like, hey, I'll share my whole tech stack with the guy in BC, and the guy in BC is like, I can share my nurse practitioners, and everybody's working together. And you know who benefits? Me, because all of them are funneling all their coaching right back to me.
Yeah.
So within this last weekend, it literally went from like a slow scale to a holy smoke scale to like so this week I'm heading down to Dallas to the big ADHD conference, CHAD conference, meeting Dr. Pahar and his team down there. And meanwhile, Dr. Chatur and him, they're all so we're basically all working cahoots, to the point where when I get back, I was supposed to go right back into coaching. I was just told everybody this morning on my staff meeting, get me a couple new coaches in immediately, because they need to take it off my plate, because I got 3 weeks before school shuts down to get into every student union and share what's going on and just start funneling people right back in. So I'm sure you hear stories like this. I mean, usually you get really early success and a lot of press, and then it's just a bunch of like hard work, and then you get little inklings of good things that happen. But can you tell me some, or share some of the stories? I know you've been working for entrepreneurs for a long time, of people who have run into problems, and you know about my backstory about running into issues, but then somehow came out to make it. What is the thing that makes a company like resilient and
Mm.
get to where they need to be? And what are the things that just kill companies? You've seen it. You work with a lot more than I have, so I'm just curious on your perception.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I love that story too that you shared, Keith, because like the things I took out of that was that you didn't have it all figured out, but you knew that there was something there that was
Mhm.
worth kind of, putting the energy in to figure it out, or at least bring the people together and see if there's a fit. If there's no fit, then
Yeah,
that's when it'll fall apart and it
yeah.
will just carry on, right? But like you're never afraid to like kind of pick up the phone and say, hey, let's just like you guys need to be. Let's just connect and see. So
Mhm.
I love that because it's that quality that really is like a perseverance thing. It's like, well, let's just try it. Like the worst thing
Yeah.
than there's worser things than failure. It's like not trying at all, like, and there is no failure. It's just lessons learned, right?
Mhm.
And how you do it, differently or better or faster, whatever it is next time. So I think what I'm seeing a lot of anyway is folks that are not afraid to say, you know what, I don't have this whole thing figured out, but like I I want to make sure I'm asking the right questions. I want to like they're showing a bit of vulnerability, like saying,
Mhm.
you know what, I don't know everything, like, but I really intrigued and I'm interested and I want to be the best I can be in this. It's those folks that when they share that authenticity, that reality, that realness, people just naturally gravitate towards them. I honestly
Mhm.
do believe that. Like I gravitate towards people who say, I don't have this all figured out. Like I really don't know what I'm doing. And I think one of the things I love about you, Keith, is that you are honest to the core.
To the
Like there
deep.
is no
There's no,
there's
yeah.
you share. Like I'm an oversharer,
Yeah,
you're
me
an
too.
oversharer,
Oh,
right? Like,
100%. Yeah.
we share, but I think we attract a certain people when we do that because
Mhm.
we're not afraid to kind of pull the curtain back and say, you know what, this is me, right?
Yeah,
And that I think brings with it people who really want to help lift you up and make the
that's
connections and do all that. I think folks who are that get stuck on the idea and that it's their idea and there's an ego based kind of thing
mhm.
that's happening with their idea or business or whatever, those folks I think will struggle more because the openness or the vulnerability factor, maybe they're afraid to show vulnerability, maybe they think vulnerability is weakness,
Yeah,
but in my feeling that's not the case. um yeah, so it's those things, and it's somebody who who asks good questions, like uses the opportunity to ask good questions, make the connection, and be thoughtful about it, and always ask the person too, like, who else should I be talking to,
exactly.
because you don't know, like somebody says that to me, and I'm not going to say, well, I don't really think you should be talking to anybody, or I don't really know anybody. Well, I'm not in this field of work if I don't know people that I feel like you should make a connection with, or
Mhm.
at least help facilitate that connection or whatever. And then it's up to you, right? If you take it somewhere and all that. So anyway, I know I didn't necessarily answer that question, but I
Oh,
think
yes.
it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Vulnerability is one thing.
speaking of that question about talking to people, it was Mary Jane Cops actually was my mentor for a long time,
Hmm.
and it fell apart for us a little bit when I had the incident with this other fella. He basically pitted my mental health against my ability to run a company, which was the worst
Mm,
thing you could possibly do. And she was a mentor of mine, but he was like playing my mental health into the fact that I wasn't capable of running a company, like being a CEO or coaching.
mm,
And it took it all away from me. And while he was stripping that away from me, he was also stripping all the money out of my company too, paid for all his immigration stuff with it. was
Yeah.
making stupid purchases, like all without asking. He's just like, well, I'm the COO, so I know what I'm doing. And I finally asked him one day, my dad had mentioned this because my dad and I were out on a fishing trip, and I was really frustrated. And I was like, I thought a COO, like I thought we worked together, right? I hate hierarchy. And this is the other thing with the way
Mm.
I run. I can't stand like I'm the CEO. I can't even say it out loud without justifying it with my little play on word. I'm the chief empowerment officer. That's good enough.
Yeah. You
I
just want
don't,
to do the thing,
I
right?
just want to do the
Do the
thing, and I
thing.
want us all to do the thing and get to where we
Yeah.
need to be, right? But anyways, it was Mary Jane who said, told me back in the day, she's like, if you're meeting, I don't know, Joe Blow who owns a coffee shop, or you're meeting the prime minister, all of them put their pants on like one leg at a
Same way.
time.
Mm.
They're just people, right? And if
Yeah.
you treat them like people, they will be responsive. If you treat them like they're some sort of elitist, they probably, well, first of all, you're not going to have a conversation with them at all, right? So I remember
Yeah.
a
The
very
halo
distinct
effect. Yeah.
networking event. It was at the web.com networking event down at Pier 21. And I was like, I'm going to meet the the mayor today, right? Which our mayor is amazing. He's such a great guy. But can't remember his name. You know what I'm talking about, the mayor of
Mike
Halifax.
Savage.
Mike Savage, awesome
Yeah.
guy, right?
Yeah.
But he was there, and then the premier was there too, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go meet Mike Savage, and then at the last minute, I was like, no, I'm switching over here, and it was great because he was just like, wow, you're a big guy like me, and I said I can't even remember what I said, but whatever it was, there was no, it wasn't like that
He's the
official
mayor.
kind of
Yeah.
recorded thing that they said.
Yeah.
And then from then on, I was like, I can meet whoever I want. So Mary Jane,
Hmm.
because I always want to meet Richard Branson. He's kind of my idol. And she's like, you will. It may not happen immediately, but you're going to do it. You'll find a way. So anyways,
I have no doubt either that you'd find a
yeah.
way to do
So
that. Yeah.
so on that note, can you talk about mentorship and the role of mentorship in entrepreneur, and this connection piece that some of us get, some of us don't, but the ones who get it we're
Yeah.
kicking, doing
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think mentorship is like it just should go hand in hand with entrepreneurship or even with career development. Like just to have somebody that you have that's in your corner that you can trust. You know, they're a sounding board. They're not going to do the work for you, but they have some wisdom. They've had some they have some seasonality in their life. They've been through the rigor of different jobs and all kinds of things. So just mentorship in general. It's many programs and like Rise included, we have the mentorship element that gets attached to the program. So like if you get fine or approved for financing, that before we disperse the money, we're going to match you with a volunteer business mentor.
Oh
And
wow.
in trying to find that mentor, I'll go to the applicant and say, share with me some of your mentoring needs. Like, what are some areas of your business that you could really benefit from having some wisdom or some added perspective or insight or knowledge or whatever? And then we'll look to our volunteer mentors, business mentors to facilitate a match. And the fit has to make sense.
Exactly.
And I think the beauty of some of the a positive thing that came out of our COVID experience together throughout the world is that we're now so much more open to these virtual matches. And
Mhm.
before we'd have to be like, you have to be in the same geographical area. So but now it's like if there's a right match in BC or in the Yukon or in Edmonton, like
Mhm.
why can't we make that connection? So mentorship, I think, is goes hand in hand with any kind of development of a person, whether it's entrepreneurship, career, whatever it is. I think everybody can benefit with mentorship. And there's the formal aspect of it, which is tied to a program, but I also don't think necessarily people need a program to go and find a mentor. I think anybody can say, hey, I can benefit from mentorship. And how could I bring that to my life? And now with things like LinkedIn and Twitter and networking groups and just all that, is easy for someone to just raise their hand and say, I could really benefit from having somebody who has been through this experience if I can have a conversation with them. And just it starts there, even just a conversation. And it doesn't have to be, hey, will you be my mentor for a year? It could
Yeah.
be, Keith, like, I really like your story. I like what you're about. I think there's some connect, like we've got some similar interests or values
Mhm.
or perspectives on things. Like, would you mind, like, if can I pick your brain for like 40 minutes
Yeah.
um for a coffee, or I'll take you for a pizza, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And and then use that time to ask good questions, to be open to where it goes. I always think of Dr. Stephen Covey's, one of his 7 principles of highly effective habits of highly effective people.
Mhm.
First, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Okay.
That really sits with me. Like, I try to deploy that, I think, in every, my interactions. Like, I just want to understand first, and then help you understand me. But I just, get the lay to land first, and all that. So yeah, a long way to go around it. But I think mentorship is key.
Yeah.
People shouldn't rely on just a formal program for mentorship, but if they see the value, just to go out and, raise their hand and say, I mean, and metaphorically, raise their hand and say, I'm open to mentorship. I could really value this. And mentorship could be like a one-off conversation, or it could be like, let's meet once a month and do check-ins and see how it goes. Or you come to me when you have a challenge or an issue and we can talk through it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can
Mhm.
help ask some really good questions that will help round out, what you need to be thinking about. And but ultimately, as an entrepreneur or as a career person, decisions on you. Never
Exactly.
going to tell somebody. Never
Yeah.
going to tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I got it's enough responsibility for me to do that for myself, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But everyone has to own that and actively participate in that part of their growth, I think.
Yeah, I was talking to you earlier. I won't mention names of companies or anything, but one of the companies I used to do a lot of work for, I did coaching around people that were neurodiverse, as I mentioned. So, and I went into this organization, um, much like your experience with the YMCA. I was at a networking event at this organization. I said, everybody there was pretty much had either blue, black, or red business cards. Mine was yellow and orange, right? With a
Mm.
big sun on it and all my things. And I said, hey, is anybody in here because you can't work for anybody else like me? And of the 30 people in the room, 17 of them raised their hands and said, yeah, that's me. And I said, can I talk to you in another room? And it turns out they had things like ADHD, autism, bullying in the workplace, trauma, all
Hmm.
kinds of things that kind of affected them that wanted autonomy, ironically. And so that parlayed into, well, it started off with Brian Aird. He used to
Mm.
run the Entrepreneurs with Disability Network. He had a client that was in there and he says, okay, Keith, I got $200. What can you do for $200? And I was like, I don't know, I'll meet with her twice and see what happens. So twice turned into a lot more than that, because as soon as I got in there, people were like, hey, can you help me get organized? And can you help me
Yeah.
with my planner and all this? And so eventually I had like 80 hours accumulated. And this is before I understood that you need a contract before you go work for somebody. I was just trying to do something nice. And then at the end of it, I was like, and it was also the caseworkers that were asking, like Elizabeth Collis and so many awesome people that used to work down there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they were asking, and so I went to submit my bill, and the executive director at the time was like, well, we don't have any money to hire you. And I was like, what? I was like, but I've been doing all this work for free. And he said, that's your problem, not mine. And I said, well, where do you guys get funding from? And they said, Employment Nova Scotia. I'm like, do you have a connection there? And so I just went straight to her and said what I've been doing and expressed the need. And it was a fluke. She happened to have kids that had ADHD, and I think maybe one on
Hmm.
the spectrum. And she gave me my first contract, my first big, real, not one-to-one
Hmm.
coaching, big contract for an organization. I kept that going for 8 years, and I did run into problems towards the end because it's also when the stuff had happened with my business partner that went down to
Hmm.
pot. So I wasn't in the best mental headspace. Long story short, it came to an end. But a lot of the people that I coached over the years, I still stayed in contact with. So my mechanic is a guy that I coached. My dentist, my like everybody that that I coach to there, I still do business with them. So I was like, I'm just going to start up another group. So last year I started up something called the Neurodivergent Entrepreneur Group Coaching Program. I don't even know what it's called now, but it's all either current people that are going through a self-employment benefits program at SEED or CBDC. There's even a guy coming from your group at NSCC there. And we run it every week. It started off being like monthly, then bi-weekly, then weekly, and it's just become a support. And so I'm not there to do your financials. I got a math disability. You don't want me doing your financials. But what we do is we're going through the waves that come with
Together.
it, like the life traumas that happen. One person's going through a divorce, yet still trying to run her company, right? Like, just trying to mitigate all the challenges. But anyways, not hoping. I will be turning that into it's been a pilot, but we're going to turn it into a program here in the new year once I can go and chat with somebody who can advise on some of the grants and such that are out there for programs like that. But anyways, the long and the short is that, the biggest thing is just needing community. And this is part of the reason why I love Halifax or just Nova Scotia so much. I started my business here. I'm from BC originally. But if you go networking here and I went to the first one, Debbie Adams was putting one on for the chamber. I went to that. And it was the first one in 3 years, and I still recognize half the people there, right?
Yeah.
That's what I love about this province. What do you love most about this province in terms of business, and why'd you stay here and didn't go to Ottawa or Toronto or one of the big cities to do it?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I'm a Newfoundland girl, and Nova Scotia is it feels like home now, right? Like Newfoundland's always home, any Newfoundlander, but like Nova Scotia has all the good parts of that for me. And it's connection, it's people, it's like that. You walk into a room and it could be 3 years go by, but yet like we did this at NSCC, right? Was it a month ago now? And we were like,
just
oh
a
my
month
God, it
ago.
was like this big reunion, we're so excited. And we're literally getting kind of not pushed out the door, but we were over an hour beyond what we thought we would be there, right? And we're like, oh, it's so exciting. So it's there's parts of that. There's a ton of support. I always say to entrepreneurs, like, do not go at this alone, because there's organizations, there's people, there's that will, even if it's 10 minutes of a conversation to say, I'm an open book. I always say that when I do workshops and all that. I'm like, I will share with you anything I can about my own experiences, because I've learned a ton. And I say that about the work I do. It's my lived and learned experience.
I love that.
Of 20 years, right, of doing this. And some of the stuff I do, the stuff I do around customer experience, like I was doing that work before I even knew that that's what it was called. Like there's always been that piece of me in all of my jobs where it was around how do we improve and get the customer experience better or get it right, or we've missed the mark on that. And now we're saying, I'm sorry. Like, how can we prevent that? Right. So it's those things. And I think that element of wanting to make things better. I think if it's natural in people, then that they naturally kind of lean towards entrepreneurship, because then they can be, they can do the things that they want to do and then figure it out as you go along. Like I love that part about you. It's like you have an idea and you will leap into it. You will stumble along the way, but you're not afraid to stumble, right? You're not afraid at all. And eventually it will either shine into something that's like amazing, or it will have a season of time and you just you let it go, because at least you tried. At least you tried.
Give it my best.
Yeah.
And it's not instantaneous either. I do get anxious. Like I have a lot of ideas. That's the thing with me. It's just constant ideas, but it's the execution is always the challenge for me. It's like I can get things about 80% and then I get bored, right? But it's always been about team building. People are like, oh, you just need to find the right person. Well, coming up with the decision to find the right person. I thought that I found the right person before, didn't work out. Also, when I had my tech company, I was like the first company at Volta, the only company at Volta without a technical co-founder, right? I had Mark that was helping me out, but Mark Hobbs, give a shout out from him from Fund Metric. He was an amazing mentor. But I didn't,
awesome.
like, I'm not a techie guy, and I got into it clouded by what a lot of people do is like $30 million buyouts and like Ferraris
Big
and
exits.
big exit, but that's not reality. That's not, like, 95% of the jobs out there aren't those big exit things. They're people like us and just trying to make a go of it. So anyways, it's always going to be a role. I love it. My next big plan, actually, I just put this out. I did this webinar for McGraw-Hill, and they reached out to me based on all these webinars I did for ADHD Awareness Month. And have you heard of McGraw-Hill before?
I have. I hear the name, but I'm trying to piece that together.
Yeah, that's what I said. They're the textbook people, right?
Okay, so, that's why.
Yeah, okay. So it's the textbook stuff, and then I went to Google. This was just like a week ago. I went to Google them, and I was like, I looked them up on LinkedIn, and there's like 6,000 employees, $4.5 billion company, and I'm on there. I thought I was doing a podcast. They told me on Friday it was actually a webinar, and I did it last Monday. But anyways, so I whipped a little presentation together to do it, and it was amazing. There was like 300 people on this webinar. It was the most amazing thing. And so I put a picture.
You're not afraid of any of this stuff, right?
No,
You're
it doesn't faze me at all. I was just like, this is great. See what happens. But I made a little vision board, and I put on it a picture of Canada, and I put like Beyond ADHD in New Brunswick, and I put what do you call it? Adult ADHD Center in BC and advocacy right in the middle, and this big bus, like a Class A motorhome. That's my goal right now. I'm going to go and buy one of those big bus motorhomes and put ADDvocacy mobile and just hop in the bus. And I can't say it too loud, but gets somebody very close to my life to quit her job and come work with me and plan it all out and just hit the road, right? I want to do these and have these conversations all over Canada. And drive people back to our amazing coaches. Like the amount of people in the social services field that are out there that have unreal backgrounds, but because it's the helping field, they get paid nothing. So I want to pay really well, grow it really well together. Right now I need a bilingual coach in French. I'm looking for a Indigenous coach, African Canadian coach. I want to have the most multicultural, live and be an example for every diversity, equity, inclusion, but not just say the stupid words that a lot of people say. Actually live it and prove it, because all the people that I do have, like all of us live with, we all self-identify as neurodivergent. The best person I had, well, my most recent hire, Kendra Bauer, she was on the spectrum and has ADHD. And by the way, we're all very open about it, so I'm not sharing anything out of the loop. But in the environment that she was just in last year was like very rigid, 9 to 5. This is the way you have to do it. You have to be at a million meetings. And she's just not that person, right? So when she started with me, she wanted to go part-time. I was like, all right, your hours are like 8:30 to 12:30. But then within a couple of weeks, I'm getting emails at like 5 o'clock in the morning, weekends, all this stuff. I'm like, why are you doing that? It's 8 to 5:30. She's like, or 8 to 12:30. And she's like, well, I work best at 3 o'clock in the morning and on weekends. And when, the kids aren't screaming and everything else. And so I was like, okay, we'll just work then, right? Other than when you have appointments, I don't care when you work. And the productivity that came out of her. 2 books, all like a million different things. Anyways, long story short, she's this is kind of where we're at. So I want to just really thank you though for coming on the show. I got to wrap it up because I could talk forever, and I looked at
I know. I always love chat with you, Keith.
Yeah, I know.
We can carry on for so long.
So if people wanted to get a hold of you through Rise and through your website, can you let us know how they can reach you?
Yep. So for Rise, it's Nova Scotia at risehelps.ca. That's my email. they'll
Okay.
come to me. But our website is risehelps.ca.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else to say? Any parting wisdom?
Yeah, I just think if the big thing is if you're looking at entrepreneurship, don't go at it alone. There's a ton of support. Raise your, your hand and say, "Hey, I'm interested. Can we have a chat?" And maybe you don't even know the questions to ask, but you just want to have that conversation. So people are out there, talk, be vulnerable, you know. Some people it might strike them the wrong way, but for most, I think they'll, if anything, you'll be memorable and they'll want to wrap their arms around you and support and
True.
help and lift you up. So
That's what
yeah.
with me, I started this thing years ago. It's called Mandate for or Mental Health, where men are welcome with a hug, not a handshake. And when I go out networking back in the day, I used to go around and hug everybody. I still will if they let me.
Yeah.
Right now it's
Yeah.
all COVID-fied, but I'm a big guy. I'm 6'7". So when I'm coming at you, like, you better watch out. But it's funny because there's so many stiff-handed networkers
Oh yeah.
trying to sell you
Yeah.
stuff, but those of us, I mean, when we met up at NSCC, everybody was just like so happy to see each other. But
So happy to see
anyways,
each other. Yeah.
I could talk
Yeah.
to you forever, but in the interest of time and sleep, we should get on
Yeah.
it.
Virtual hug for you.
Virtual hug is anyways. Thanks so much for coming on,
Right
and
on, Keith.
yeah, we'll talk to you soon.